The injuries keep mounting for the New York Islanders as two-thirds of the top line and three of their defensemen are all out. We'll talk about what the Islanders can do to handle it and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, just match with Indeed. We have got a lot to get to. What a crazy weekend it was. The New York Islanders split their two games, but boy, oh boy, the injuries just keep coming. And we're going to break all of that down before we even get into the split that the Islanders had over the weekend, beating Buffalo and losing to the New York Rangers. So let's start at the beginning, as they say. The New York Islanders dealing with some serious injuries right now. Mathew Barzal, upper body injury, out 4 to 6 weeks. He has been placed on LTIR by the New York Islanders. Adam Pelech, upper body injury, 4 to 6 weeks. He's been placed on IR by the New York Islanders, not LTIR. So right now, between Mathew Barzal and Anthony Duclair, two-thirds of your top line that started the season on LTIR, and then with Adam Pelech on IR for 4 to 6 weeks. Mike Reilly, who suffered a pretty scary-looking injury Friday, he's listed as day-to-day with an upper body injury. Alex Romanov listed as day-to-day with an upper body injury. So, the Islanders ended up having to do a little legwork. And it was kind of crazy, the Islanders announcing, courtesy of Eric Hornick, their crack statistician, that Sunday's game against the Rangers was the first time since October 11th, 1993, that the Islanders had three defensemen in their lineup that did not play in the previous game. And look, we all know that this New York Islanders team was struggling to score goals before these injuries hit. We know that this New York Islanders team has been struggling a little bit defensively and definitely on special teams. That, it hasn't been easy for this club. And now you're down two of your top three forwards, all three of your left shot defensemen. So on a stopgap, the Islanders called up Grant Hutton and called up Samuel Bolduc, inserted Dennis Cholowski into the lineup, and had a go of it against the New York Rangers. Now, look, you look at the numbers from the game, and I think that says a lot about how limited this Islanders team was. Samuel Bolduc only played 5 minutes and 56 seconds. Part of that due to a really bad turnover that he committed that led directly to a goal by the Rangers. Dennis Cholowski played a little less than 14 minutes. Grant Hutton a little more than 14 minutes. But then Ryan Pelech, 29 minutes plus. Noah Dobson, 25 minutes plus. Scott Mayfield, 23 minutes plus. I think short term, you can get away with this for a game, maybe two. But long term, you need Alexander Romanov. You need Mike Reilly. You need Adam Pelech back. and obviously Pelech at the very least, and Barzal are going to be out of commission for the foreseeable future. And, what line combinations did Patrick Waugh put together Sunday? Bo Horvat, Anders Lee, J.G. Pageau, that was the top line. They kept Nelson, Siplikov, and Palmieri together as the second line. Casey Cizikas moved up to the third line with Pierre Engvall and Simon Holmstrom. And then Kyle McLean, Hudson Fasching, and Oliver Wahlstrom were the fourth line to start the game. Defensively, it was Cholowski and Dobson, Polak and Mayfield, Bolduc and Hutton. Again, at least to start, but Bolduc, as we said, only played about a little less than 6 minutes before he just, rode the pine for the rest of the game. And clearly, Patrick Waugh after the game basically said he's got to play better if he wants to stay in the lineup. And with Bolduc, I think more than anything, it's a confidence issue. And the Islanders have to address that confidence issue. Now, the rumor that started to go around the league almost immediately after the Islanders announced these injuries was that the Islanders are probably looking for some blue line help. And Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet, again, one of the more plugged in NHL insiders, basically said that Lou Lamoriello and the Islanders may be in the market for a defenseman. And what Friedman said, we're starting to wonder about the Islanders and their injuries. It is believed the Islanders are at least looking around. They have 3 defensemen out. Adam Pelech, unfortunately, for quite a bit of time, 4 to 6 weeks, they said. Still also more day-to-day for Mike Reilly and Alexander Romanov, but at least they are sniffing around to see what's out there. And that makes sense. The Islanders have to do something. And I think they may be able to get by for one more game with Cholowski, Hutton, and Bolduc, but realistically, you want an upgrade, especially if 4 to 6 weeks, that's a long time. And I am not going to say, even though there is a lot of cap space available right now for the New York Islanders as a result of Duclair and Barzal both being on LTIR, they're not going to go out and get a marquee, high-priced, elite defenseman who's suddenly going to make this blue line, change the complexion of it. What happened last year when injuries affected the defensive core? Basically, Lou Lamoriello traded for Mike Reilly and added Robert Bortuzzo. And, what? He gave up a 7th-round pick for one, claimed the other on waivers. I think we're going to see something similar out there where the Islanders will look around, see some of the guys who maybe are healthy scratches more often than not for their respective teams and try to add, a guy or two who might be able to help them out in the interim. So, it's not going to be the next Dennis Potvin or the next Paul Coffey. You're looking more at somebody like Eric Gustafsson, for example, of the Red Wings, who, was in training camp on a PTO with the Islanders 3 years ago, and who was missed 4 out of the first 11 games. A guy like Eric Brandstrom from Vancouver. And Vancouver's defense is struggling, so I'm not saying he's all of a sudden the answer. But, he can kill penalties. He can give you a little experienced help. Maybe a Brendan Smith from Dallas. He's only played half the games for the Stars so far this year. I think you're looking at a guy to bring in who can, you give up a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick, or you sign someone off waivers if they are available, if you're lucky enough to get that. That's what I think will happen with the defense situation. But there's more to come. I mean, let's face it. The Islanders have been struggling to score goals and still need to figure out how to get more offense from this lineup without Duclair and Barzal in the lineup. How can the Islanders handle that situation? We're going to talk a little bit about that. We'll have our takeaways from both of this weekend's games, and for our Islanders' birthday of the day, a goalie who was with the Islanders in the mid to late 90s basically started for the team for, I think, 1 year, was a steady contributor for 3, but never really panned out, was the goalie for some pretty struggling Islanders teams. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Prize Picks. And folks, you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are safe, fast, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as little as 15 minutes. Prize Picks is basically the way to get in on the action. And, they have the flex play, which means you could still cash out. If your lineup isn't perfect, you can double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So basically, head on over to the app, download it, use code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the Prize Picks app, use code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by Indeed. And look, we're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work and use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of Locked On Islanders will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. So the Islanders are going to struggle to score goals. I don't think there's any question about that. You've got a situation where, this team, as of right now, is ranked 31st in the NHL in goals scored. And, that's not where you want to be. You're 12 games into the season. It's not like you could say, 3 games, not a big sample size. 12 games, you're starting to see patterns. And every day, as we talked about how the second line for the Islanders, which is Brock Nelson, Kyle Palmieri, and Maxim Siplikov, they're the only trio that was producing consistently, especially 5-on-5. So you had 3 lines that weren't getting the job done. And if you look at the lines that Patrick Waugh put together for the game against the Rangers, I mean, Horvat and Lee and Pajot as your top line. Lee has been playing. He's certainly an upgrade over Holmstrom on the top line. Pajot has not been scoring. Cizikas, Engvall, and Holmstrom, none of them have been scoring. McLean, Fashing, and Wallstrom, none of them have been scoring. So you need to do something. And you do have the cap space. I think the Islanders will likely add one, possibly two defensemen, but low cost. The question is, how do you handle the forward situation? And you have options. You can stick it out with what you've got and say, okay, in about 3 to 5 weeks, we're getting Anthony Duclair back, hopefully. In 4 to 6 weeks, we're getting back Mathew Barzal. We can tough it out, tighten up defensively, try to win a lot of 2-1 games, and stay close enough during the next 4 to 6 weeks in order to make up that ground when everybody's healthy. And, we could still contend for a playoff spot. That is one approach. Another approach is to go out and add, another player or two. You could even try to add a name guy. You've got some cap space to work with now. But do you want to sacrifice prospects or draft picks to get that guy? That, I think, is the fundamental question that we may not know the answer to. I mean, I think you don't want to give up a lot going forward. That, this team needed a retool anyway to double down and try to bring in more guys and give away a first-round pick or a player who you think is a part of your future. That doesn't make sense. Don't give up on Cole Yzerman or Alex Jeffries or some of the higher-ranked prospects in order to get another guy in here. I don't think that's the right answer. I don't think it's time yet to blow things up. I mean, we're only 12 games into the season. I think you do want to see if you can stay close until everybody gets healthy. If that doesn't work, then you could start saying, hey, time to trade away some of the veterans and start accumulating picks and prospects. That tends not to be Lou Lamoriello's MO. But, I mean, we'll see how much Lou believes in this core. The one thing I don't want to have happen, no matter what, I do not want to see Lou Lamoriello use the injuries as an excuse to come back next year with essentially the same roster as he's had the last 3 or 4, with a couple of, 1 or 2 exceptions. And, we're still stuck in that proverbial muddy middle. That's what I don't want to see. So, if you want to go all in for this year, you've got to be able to pull off a deal that is just off the charts, a steal. And I don't think they have the ammunition to do that without sacrificing the future. And I don't think this team is one goal scorer away from being a Stanley Cup contender. The problem with the Islanders is they are not good enough to contend for a Stanley Cup, not good enough to be one of the top 10 teams in the league. And they're not bad enough to be one of the top candidates to win the lottery and get a top 3 draft pick. They are, when healthy, somewhere between 13th and 20th in this league, where they're either just going to make or just going to miss the playoffs. The team is older. The prospect pool that the team has right now, not a lot of guys who are ready. So, look, what you could do as another alternative is bring up some of the guys down in Bridgeport who, might be able to give you a little juice offensively. Alex Jeffries is playing well so far this year. Is he ready for long-term NHL action? Probably not. But could he give you more offense than, let's say, a Pierre Engvall or a Hudson Fasching? I think he could at least match them with the potential to be better. So that's your other option, and that's maybe the option I like. If it's 4 to 6 weeks, if you want to call up an Alex Jeffries or a Mathew or a William Dufour, you could do that. And maybe you call up one of those three, and then you call up either a Kallstrom, a Foodie, or a Gauthier. So you get one experienced guy and one young guy. And maybe you say, okay, for the next 3 games, we're going to play this young guy. And if he doesn't look ready and he doesn't play well, we've got a couple of other young guys who we could bring up and insert into the lineup. And I would feel better at least giving one young prospect in this organization at Bridgeport a limited chance than I would sticking with all these older guys who have not been scoring, who really aren't great offensive players. I would rather see this team give it a shot with some of the younger guys. But that also means they're not going to play 6 minutes a night. If you're going to put them into the lineup, put them into the lineup for 12 minutes, 14 minutes. They're not going to play 22 minutes or 19 minutes, but give them 12 minutes or more a game. Let them make their mistakes and see what they can do. Because you know what? The veterans are also making mistakes. They're not providing you with offense. They're not goal scorers. You say what you want. I'm not saying Pierre Engvall or Hudson Fasching or, Kyle McLean. I'm not saying they're not useful hockey players. Simon Holmstrom can be a useful hockey player, but they're not offensive-minded players. And I'd rather give a chance to a guy who has more offensive upside and see what they could do than continue to roll out the same guys who haven't been getting the job done this year and for the most part last year and for the most part the year before. We'll see what the Islanders do. There are options. And obviously we will keep you updated here on the Locked On Islanders podcast, both on X and here with videos and on social media. So make sure you follow us and take care of that because we will keep you up to date on all the latest. We've got more to get to. Islanders with a split this weekend. We'll talk about the games. We will also have our Islanders birthday of the day. All that and more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Built. And look, folks, lots to talk about with Built. Renters, ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. And that's where Built comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the bill points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points toward a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You could also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward future rent payments, or they're designed really to fit and meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked in the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to join built.com/lockedonnhl. That's JOINBILT.com/lockedonnhl. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Join built.com/lockedonnhl to start earning points with your rent payments today. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. And Islander fans, check out the odds for the Islanders on Tuesday as they take on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Check out what the odds are for the Islanders to win or maybe for Bo Horvat to score a goal. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, the split this weekend, I tell you, I'm not disappointed with all the injuries and excuse me, and everything else that's going on. The Islanders beating Buffalo 4-3. The Islanders even got a power play goal. And again, you saw the Siplikov, Palmieri, and Nelson line really being sort of the centerpiece of the team, scoring 2 of the 4 goals. Bo Horvat got one, and the Islanders battled through it. Sorokin made 32 saves. He played well. And at the very least, we saw certain guys kind of take the team on their back. Bo Horvat had 8 shots on goal. Anders Lee had 2 assists, really stepped up, had 5 shots on goal. He made so much more sense on that top line than Simon Holmstrom, and Holmstrom had an assist playing in the bottom 6, which is really where he belongs at this stage in his career. The problem was the very scary injury to Mike Reilly. Then you had the injury to Alexander Romanov. I mean, this was just, and obviously Adam Pelech. So you had, you're down to 4 defensemen for this game because Romanov did tough it out. You're down to 4 defensemen, and the gutsiness that the Islanders showed in this game. And look, Buffalo is not a world beater. They're not an elite team by any stretch of the imagination. But when you're already down so many players, no Barzal, no Duclair, you're missing all those defensemen at different points in the game. To go with 4 defensemen for most of the game, where every defenseman is essentially playing every other shift and coming away with a win, you got to be pleased. This team dug deep and found a way to get 2 points, even if they did not play, an elite game from start to finish. I give Patrick Roy and the Islanders credit for that performance. But then Sunday, matinee, Madison Square Garden, first of all, you run into a good goalie, a really good goalie, in Igor Shesterkin. Tough to beat him, and then you had to be perfect. And the defensive breakdowns. We talked about Bolduc. Look, Noah Dobson, still really not good in his own zone. And now, that to me is an even bigger reason why if the Islanders bring in a defenseman, it's got to be someone who is solid in their own zone, because you cannot have, Reilly's not great in his own zone. Dobson is terrible in his own zone right now. You've got to have somebody who can be a solidifying force opposite them. Again, we saw, the Islanders giving up a shorthanded goal. We saw this team give up a power play goal. The special teams, again, remains a major problem for the Islanders, who don't score on the power play, give up the shorty, give up the power play goal. That is unfortunately par for the course. Can't fault Ilya Sorokin. He didn't play poorly, but again, just not enough offense, and that's because you don't have the lineup for it. And look, Pierre Engvall probably played his best game of the year, had 4 shots on goal and an assist, was even a +1, but the depth just isn't there, both offensively and defensively right now. And, every day, as we've talked about it on the show, at the end of the day, the way this team is built is a problem, and you don't have the depth. And that's why, no shame in losing to the Rangers, even though you hate losing to the Rangers, but no shame in it. The bottom line was, when you're that shorthanded, The Islanders stayed in the game for a while, but they were overmatched. And they have got to play better if they hope to win some of these games before some of their injured players return. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. Today is the 49th birthday of former Islanders netminder Eric Fichaud, the Anjou, Quebec native, first-round pick of the Maple Leafs in 1994, 16th overall pick, made his NHL debut with the Islanders in 1995-96, stayed with the team through the 97-98 season, then played for Nashville, Carolina, and Montreal, but really spent most of the rest of his career in the minor leagues. Played in 95 career NHL games, had a 3.14 goals against average and 8.97 save percentage. One of his better games as an Islander, January 25th, 1997, at the Nassau Coliseum. Islanders hosting the Chicago Blackhawks. Islanders in the fisherman jerseys. Jeff Hackett and, of course, Eric Fichaud are the goalies. And in this game, the Islanders emerge with a 3-2 win. The game winner by Derek Armstrong in the third period. But in this game, the Islanders are outshot by a total of 49-22. But Eric Fichaud, 47 saves. That's a .959 save percentage to keep the Islanders in it and get the big W. Not too many times you make that many saves and win the game facing almost 50 shots. Eric Fichaud stood on his head. He is our Islanders birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget that if you have a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I'm live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis. And it's always great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. I do have a question for the mailbag for tomorrow's show. So if anyone else has a mailbag question, get them in and I will read them on the Tuesday show. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.